Good evening and welcome to Mello TV. I'm your host, Nicole Hayles. Thank you for joining us for this evening's discussion as we continue to analyze the findings of our Mello TV poll with pollster and Chief Executive Officer of Johnson Survey Research Limited, Bill Johnson. Also joining the discussion are political commentator Linton Gordon and political analyst Paul Bourne. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening to your listeners.
Dr. Peter Phillips first entered Parliament as a senator when the People's National Party won the 1989 general election by a landslide. He was elected a vice president of the PNP in 1999, serving with Portia Simpson Miller. He twice unsuccessfully ran for the president of the PNP in 2006 and 2008. After his party's loss in the 2007 election, Phillips helped his party deliver a 2-1 victory over the Jamaica Labour Party, where Portia Simpson Miller selected him to be her Minister of Finance and Public Service. The People's National Party then lost the 2016 election, and he was elected president of the PNP, succeeding Portia Simpson Miller in 2017. In 2009, he was contested for the leadership by Peter Bunting. He retained his leadership after a victory on September 7, 2019. Tonight, based on the numbers, Bill, what say the people of Jamaica? Are they saying Dr. Phillips should step down?
Well, actually, on the basis of our survey, it's very difficult to see where Peter Phillips is adding any value to the PNP's forthcoming election campaign. There's actually very little good news for Peter Phillips in these survey results. As you can see, 66% say that he should step down, 15% say no, he should remain in office, and 19% don't know. Now, if we look at how PNP voters feel, also, once again, 66% of PNP voters from 2016 say he should step down, 25% say he should remain, and 9% don't know. So this really isn't sort of much of an asset for the PNP to have as it gets ready to contest the national election.
Based on Dr. Phillips's history in helping to build the party, however, unable to date to win a general election since elected president of the PNP, should he step down? Paul, let's start with you.
Well, Dr. Phillips has actually done significant amount of work for the PNP, and that is commended. But we need to understand clearly what the poll numbers are saying, and this is statistics, is research. So if the poll numbers are saying that things are totally against Dr. Phillips, this must be taken into consideration, and not just merely the fact that he has actually made significant contribution in Parliament, as Finance Minister, Minister of National Security. That does not count at the moment within the context of what the findings are saying.
Linton, should he step down?
Yes, I think he should. And that has always been my view. And that is based on the fact that he has failed to design and develop a program that inspire the vast majority of citizens to support him and to see him as Prime Minister. In the absence of that, I think he should call it a day.
Bill, of the voters who voted PNP in 2016, what are those numbers showing?
Yes, as I mentioned, 66, 2/3% of them say he should step down. Only 25% feel that he should remain in office. These are really devastating numbers for the leader of a party, as I mentioned, about to go into a very hard-fought election campaign. I mean, at this point, Peter Phillips is a definite liability to the PNP. He certainly isn't an asset.
Linton, based on what Bill just said, what kind of message is the persons who voted in the 2016 election saying to Dr. Peter Phillips?
They're basically saying that, look, we voted for your party, but over the past 4 years since you have taken over, we found the impression that you are not up to scratch you are not suitable, you are not qualified, and you have not inspired in us confidence to believe that you should be Prime Minister. And that's what they are saying to Peter Phillips.
Paul, a counter to that would be that persons might say that even though the 2016 voters say that they don't want Dr. Peter Phillips based on the results that Bill is giving us, the delegates who voted for him as party president on September 2019, they want Dr. Phillips to remain as their leader. But persons will say that the PNP delegates are not representative of the Jamaican electorate. What are your thoughts?
But that is absolutely true. But I want to actually take the discussion within some sort of context, because the PNP delegates normally gauge what is happening in terms of the environment. And what is happening here now is that people now are recognizing that Dr. Peter Phillips is not a winnable candidate for the People's National Party. And the delegates are fully aware of that, and they are going to be held accountable for the destruction of the party if they do not take this into consideration and ask Dr. Phillips to step down.
Bill, let's analyze the findings for favorability for both Dr. Phillips and Peter Bunting. What are the people of Jamaica saying in this regard?
Okay, well, first of all, for Peter Bunting, 47% have a favorable opinion of him, 25% an unfavorable opinion, and 28% aren't sure. Now, if you recall from last night, 34% have a favorable opinion of Peter Phillips, 40% an unfavorable opinion, and 26% aren't sure. If we just look at PNP voters from 2016, 68% have a favorable opinion of Peter Bunting, 62% have a favorable opinion of Peter Phillips. But definitely, as we mentioned last night, Peter Phillips is below water in terms of his favorable rating, and Peter Bunting is above water, but obviously nowhere near the favorable rating of the Prime Minister at this point.
We took to the streets to hear what Jamaicans had to say. Here are their thoughts.
I think so, you know. Get another one night party, another chance. Because right now, nothing happened for him. So him could have given next one a chance, everything can work out more better though. Me just say Peter Bunting.
Reason?
Because people love Peter Bunting too. People love Peter Phillips, you know, but me think that people will go for Peter Bunting more.
I'm not a person who follow politics, but I believe that no matter which one of them is in power, PNP or JP, it doesn't make the country any better. I'd rather see a new party than actually see one of those parties back in power again, personally.
Yes, once he given it over to the other Peter. He was so strong again, and the other Peter more up vibrant, so give second Peter the role, we can take over.
I think Peter Phillips has do his days, and I think PNP will not have a chance if Peter Phillips is the opposition leader of the PNP, because him do have no chance with Andrew Holness. I feel personally, for me, give young people a chance now. I think all of the old politicians them need to go now and give some young people a chance now. On the both sides.
34% of persons polled are in favor of Dr. Peter Phillips, while 47% are in favor of Peter Bunting. Gentlemen, do these numbers come as a surprise to you? Paul, let's start with you.
Absolutely no. From what happened last night, a tone was sort of set to look at what is happening inside the People's National Party and by extension the Jamaica Labour Party. We need to understand clearly, and I want to make this sort of known, that even though the numbers are somewhat close, a 13% difference, this is saying to us as Jamaicans and as some of us are possible voters to say Peter Bunting is not really a good viable candidate against Andrew Holness. We need to understand that clearly. So although Peter Bunting is the better of the two, is still not a viable alternative. And we need to understand clearly, Peter Bunting has done little for the PNP compared to Dr. Phillips. And if the numbers are this close, This is an indictment on the People's National Party and by extension its leader.
Linton, Paul just said that it's an indictment on the PNP. What are your thoughts?
I think that the challenge the PNP has is what most opposition parties will face when a poll is conducted. They are generally not popular. The government is popular, especially a new government. At the tail end of a government, then you will see emerge in the opposition persons who are absolutely more popular than the person in power. So the government is on a high and a good platoon now, so that any favorability and popularity will be in their favor. And therefore, within the opposition, you will find a low level of energy amongst persons who have that desire to see them back in power.
One point I'd like to make,
Paul, let's go back to you a little bit. You made mention of the word indictment.
One of the questions we asked was if people think that if they approved of the fact that Peter Bunting challenged Peter Phillips for the party leadership, and by a 3-to-1 margin, 60 to 21%, PNP voters approved of the fact that Bunting challenged Phillips, which I find very, very sort of discouraging from the standpoint of Peter Phillips.
Paul, let's go back to you, and I'm glad Bill brought that up. Hasn't the challenge reignited the base of the PNP?
As I mentioned the last time, which was yesterday, I said yes, but we need to understand clearly, although it has ignited the base of the PNP is not a party that is just whip up in a few seconds and they're emotional. The PNP is more calculated. And this is not happening in the current People's National Party. Is it that the People's National Party require a campaign expert or a campaign manager equivalent because of that of the former Prime Minister, P.J. Patterson? But something is happening to the People's National Party now, and we are not seeing this in comparison to years ago. Something is going on. The PNP is missing some energy, some vibrance. Although the PNP has introduced a number of young persons, it seems that they are also lacking in terms of vigor. Now we need to understand clearly that years ago, decades ago, the PNP was about a particular structure in terms of free education, etc. It is clear to me that Andrew Holness has taken on that approach, and the current PNP is lost. They do not know what to do, and therefore they are scampering for a new idea, a new position, while Andrew Holness is taking the lead. I will continue to take the lead while they are thinking of what next to do.
Linton, I want to bring you in here quickly before we move on. It's interesting that Paul brought up the whole issue of young people. Yesterday, you indicated that age should not be seen as an important factor when assessing the favorability and approval rating of Andrew Holness and Dr. Peter Phillips. But if we were to compare Peter Bunting and Dr. Phillips, age is a significant factor within the PNP at this time. Your thoughts?
Well, as I said, it is not age per se. If you look all over the world, there are persons with well advanced. Bernie Sanders is 78 years old, and the young people in America were inspired by him by virtue of the message he put forward. Biden, who is likely to become president, is 72, I think, but he has a message, and the message generates in young people a desire, a belief in him, and a hope and an expectation. The failure of Phillips is not age per se. He has not put forward any inspiration, any encouragement, or any policy that would generate in young people a desire to believe in him and have hope and expectation from his leadership. And I think we should make that distinction and understand that that is what is lacking rather than age per se.
Okay,
Bill,
let's
I
look
really
at
believe
the
that
numbers.
the age factor is an issue though. And why I believe the age factor is an issue, not age in terms of Peter Phillips' age versus Bunting age, but age in terms of newness versus oldness. And oldness here doesn't mean Andrew oldness. Oldness here, newness here represents new ideas. And that is what I'm actually constituting age to be. Dr. Peter Phillips just seems to be wanting in terms of something to get him up and whipped up in terms of what he ought to do. Now, when you are an opposition leader and you have been in ministerial position for years, the PNP should not be caught flat-footed as they are today. It seems as though the PNP is arbitrarily moving somewhere and the Jamaican people are moving in the opposite direction. So the PNP is actually scampering and thinking about corruption when Jamaicans are thinking about something else. But where is the idea that the PNP normally comes with? The PNP is an organization that comes with ideas and vision. When last we see anything from the PNP to say that there's a vision for the PNP? What is the PNP's
and that's
vision?
my point,
What's
Paul.
the PNP's mandate?
Okay, gentlemen, we'll come back to that point a little later on, but I just need Bill to get back to the numbers. So Bill, let's look at the numbers that reflect persons who are undecided and who are they in favor of.
Okay, you mean in terms of those who didn't vote in the last election?
Who are undecided, right.
I mean, those who didn't vote in the last election, 62% say that Peter Phillips should step down. 15% say he should remain. I don't have the figures right here in terms of favorable or unfavorable for those, but they're certainly not very favorable in terms of Peter Phillips. In fact, we have them from last night. Only 29% feel that only 27% of those who didn't vote in the 2016 election have a favorable opinion of Peter Phillips, and only 24% approve of the job he's doing. So there's that isn't very fertile ground for Peter Phillips to look for support.
Okay, in terms of who would do a better job as opposition leader, Dr. Phillips or Peter Bunting, what are those numbers saying, Bill?
Okay, well, very decidedly, people prefer Peter Bunting. 15% say Peter Phillips would do a better job. 42% Peter Bunting. 39% undecided, and 4% refuse to tell us. Once again, if we look at the PNP voters from 2016, it's 28% say Dr. Phillips would do a better job, 52% say Peter Bunting would do a better job, 19% are undecided, and 1% refuse. So really only about a quarter of those who voted for the PNP in 2016 feel that Peter Phillips would do a better job as opposition leader than Peter Bunting. And that 25% almost seems to be consistent. That seems to be sort of the hardcore Peter Phillips support among those who voted in 2016. And obviously that isn't enough to win, even come close to winning an election.
Paul Linton, you heard Bill a while ago, it's not close to win an election.
I agree. In the absence of the PNP having a leader who can generate interest and who can mobilize support throughout the country, they will never win an election. That's a simple fact.
Whoa, those are strong words. Never. I think that's not strong.
Never.
All right, but what is somewhat daunting here is the number of undecided persons in terms of what is happening in terms of Peter Phillips and Bunting. 42% to 15%, and the undecided group is 39%, in which it means that more Jamaicans dislike both candidates than somewhat close to what is actually in favor of Bunting. And that says something is wrong, fundamentally wrong with the PNP. And I do not think The leader for the PNP resides with Bunting. The leader of the PNP resides with a young, visionary person that will come forward. Because if these numbers are telling, they are indicating a high level of dissatisfaction among voters. So what I will say, Dr. Peter Phillips will not win the election against Andrew Holness. Neither will a Peter Bunting. Someone is needed to do a better job than these two candidates.
Linton, before you respond, I'm happy Paul raised that point. In the 2006 PNP presidential election, when Portia Simpson Miller was up against Peter Phillips, Portia Simpson Miller was endorsed by the then party president, P.J. Patterson. Fast forward to 2019, when Peter Bunting went up against Dr. Peter Phillips, Mrs. Simpson Miller declared that she was neutral and she was not in support of anyone. She would support whomever the delegates chose. Do you think that because of the absence of the quote-unquote Portia factor, the consolidation of Dr. Peter Phillips's leadership of the PNP, it is still on shaky ground?
I think had she endorsed him, it might have helped him somewhat, but not significantly. I think his failings are due to himself and no one else. And let me say that the PNP and Peter Phillips both need to decide whether they are going down the road that the JLP traveled during the time they were out of power for 18 years, because there were internal conflicts in that party. Gang up 1, gang up 3, gang up 5, and instead of mobilizing and uniting to win power, they spend time on internal feuds. And if that happens in the PNP, as it seems it might very well happen, then they might waste their time and never see power for a long time to come.
Bill, what can we expect tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the cabinet ministers who people feel are doing the best job, and also we're going to have the approval ratings of several key cabinet members. I think people will find it very interesting tomorrow.
Final closing arguments before we go, gentlemen. Paul, Linton, does the emperor need new clothes? What should Dr. Phillips do to ensure that he gets over the hurdle to ensure a victory for the PNP in the upcoming general election? Quickly.
Well, whether to ensure a victory or not, I think Dr. Phillips, given his personal medical challenge, whatever the state is now, and the fact that he has not generated the interest, the popularity on any program that he can put forward as in the interest of the PNP, I think that he should step aside and let the party decide who should take over from him.
Paul?
Wow, it is good times ahead. I remember the 2004 7th general election and what happened then. We are seeing something happening here again. But my thing is that if Portia had endorsed Peter, it would have made a substantial difference in the party. And that lack of endorsement has aided to destroy Peter. And many Portia individuals, the Portia camp people, do not trust Dr. Phillips, do not like Dr. Phillips, will not vote for Dr. Phillips, just like Jamaicans. And Dr. Phillips has not ignited in no Jamaican, including myself, any hope. I'm still to look and wondering, what is this hope that the PNP will be coming for? Let's say, for example, we were to give the PNP an opportunity to lead. What will they be doing? Right now, nothing is coming from the PNP. So are we going to be voting for nothing? We're too sensible to be moving backwards. And Dr. Peter Phillips should step forward in the best interest of Jamaica, not the PNP, Jamaica. And that's what where I will leave.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's our program for this evening as we analyze in our Mello TV poll conducted by pollster Bill Johnson. We're also joined by political commentator Linton Gordon and political analyst Paul Bourne. Tomorrow we'll look at the best performing government minister. I'm Nicole Hayles. Thanks for joining us.